I get a fair amount of guys who ask me, how do you pick up MILFs and cougars, and are there actually any differences in how to pick up an older girl opposed to a younger one? And guys are usually astonished when I give the following answer. No, there's no difference in picking up an older girl opposed from a younger one. There's absolutely no difference in game, technique, methods, routine-wise. It requires no difference whatsoever. However, there are nuance factors and nuance points and insights that you would have to tweak in a sense in order to get by when it comes to seducing and picking up MILFs, cougars, girls who are older between the ages of 30 and 45, 50, let's say. Alright, so let's get into the nuance factors and how to pick up MILFs and cougars. Alright, before proceeding, I want to dispel a popular myth, which is older girls are easier by virtue of the fact that they are getting old. They're reaching that point of their life where they don't, or they should not, according to popular belief, they should not be able to attract guys as much as the younger girls can. And that is definitely true. The older you get, the less options you get. But it is not a fact that the older a woman gets, the more desperate for dick she becomes. It is not the case. So that myth right there, I want to dispel it. Older women are not easier. And if they are, it is definitely not by virtue of the fact that they are getting older. I've been doing this for ages. From my experience, there's nothing intrinsically different about seducing a girl over the age of 40 opposed to a girl in her 20s. So that myth, I just wanted to dispel it right away. Okay, so one of those nuance points when it comes to seducing MILFs and cougars and girls over the age of, let's say, 36, 37, one of those nuance factors you must and should be aware of is the fact that there are trepidations that exist on the girl's part, the older woman's part, for the fact that, you know, she's going to be questioning the reason why you approach her in the first place, especially if you are a significantly younger guy. So she's going to get inside her head and wonder, like, why is he even trying to talk to me? Where is this going? Where is this coming from? And then you have the sugar mommy aspect as to why you're possibly trying to get with her or seduce her, get a number and whatnot. So you will notice this in the faces, and it's kind of hard to explain. But whenever you're chatting up an older woman, you're going to notice this sort of like, this look on her face as though she's somewhat skeptical, and she is skeptical as to why you approach. And like I said, part of this is the sugar mommy aspect. You know, she's going to be thinking to herself, well, is this guy trying to get with me in order to get something from me? Does he want me to take care of him? Does he have a money angle? Is he trying to use me for my 401k? You know, shit like that. You know, it goes and flows through their head. So you have to allay that fear and that trepidation. So be aware of that also. So you may get that puzzled, skeptical look on the face of an older girl, and that is particularly why, or one of the reasons why, she has to question what are your motives in approaching her, especially if you're significantly younger. Another interesting thing that goes through her head during the courtship phase, or the part of the game where you're chatting her up and so forth, is, does he think I'm easy because I'm older? Does he think I'm desperate because I'm older? And once again, in going back to the previous point, it all ties into the same dialogue or the same concept, which is that I'm older, he must think I'm desperate. Alright, so again, be aware of that. You will get that puzzled, skeptical look on a girl's face, and it is basically because of that. It is her getting in her head and questioning and asking herself these questions. And all you have to do is to allay those fears, and I'll tell you how to do that right now. Before proceeding, let's look at things on the angle of empathy. Put yourself in the cougar's shoes. Put yourself in the MILF's shoes. Put yourself in her shoes. If you were a 45-year-old dude or 50-year-old dude, how would you take to the idea of a girl who's in her 20s approaching you, chatting you up, trying to be all friendly, flirting with you and so forth, how would you take to that? It would sort of throw you off, definitely. You would question whether this girl has bad ulterior motives, whether she's looking for money or, you know, material gains and so forth. So from the empathy aspect, when you look at it that way, you get to realize that, okay, it is natural for the girl to have these sort of trepidations and fears. So use the empathy aspect to really bring your shit home, and, you know, to look at it from that angle, just for understanding point of view. All right. And again, I want to touch on the aspect of sex and the age factor. An older woman will think to herself, does this guy believe I'm predisposed to the idea of quick and easy sex because I'm older? Have to bear that in mind. Those are the 2 points in a nutshell as to why an older girl will feel trepidation towards a younger guy trying to seduce her. And she will ask herself, does he think I'm easy or desperate for sex? And what is he trying to get from me? Is he trying to get something from me? Is he trying to use me for money? And so forth. So those are the 2 things that will go through her head. Now, as I said before, you have to allay those fears right away. And there are 2 or maybe 3 easy ways that I go about doing this. For one, you don't want to talk about it. Alright, when guys approach older women and trying to seduce them, this could be online game, on the street, cold approach, wherever. Guys always call out the giant elephant in the room. Now, in some cases, it's good to do that. But in such a case where you're trying to seduce a MILF or a cougar or a girl over the age of 36 or whatnot, when in those situations, don't call it out. Don't bring age into the equation. Approach the girl as though she's on your level age-wise, and y'all are, you know, familiar in that factor. So you don't want to make the age gap apparent. You don't want to say, hey, I'm a younger guy and I love older women. Don't really frame it that way. View it as though you two are on level plane, and it's not a case where I'm younger and I'm looking to get something out of you, or I think you're older and you're desperate. So that is one way that you want to tweak it at first when approaching women, in order to allay their fears, especially if they're on the older side. You don't want to call out the age factor by bringing it up in the first place, by making it apparent, by saying, hey, I love older women. I'm just into older women. The fact that you approach her already says that, so you don't need to have to drive it home. It'll only bring up these fears inside the girl's head. All right, so avoid talking about the age factor. Lastly, in relation to the first point I made at the top of the video, I want you, when you approach older women, cougars, MILFs, girls over the age of 36, wherever, you know, the older ones, however you want to put them, gilfs, grannies, doesn't matter. When you approach those women, you have to, or you want to, get rid of this myth inside of your head that I'm doing this because these are easy lays. Because it's gonna seep through this, it's gonna seep through your skin, it's gonna seep through your pores, it's gonna seep through the fucking surface. And women are very perceptive. So if you're entering the frame or entering the approach with the idea of this girl is easy because she's older, she's gonna sense it and is gonna turn her off right away. With that, you want to game as usual. It's game on as usual. As I mentioned earlier, there is no intrinsic difference between picking up a 21-year-old and a 41-year-old. There's no outer game that is required for you to do differently. And if you're not familiar with pickup, outer game or tactics, routines, methods, approaches, you know, whether it's getting the phone number and so forth, there's nothing different required on an outer game level in picking up an older girl. Whatever routine you use to get a girl's phone number, it'll work on an older girl if it does on a younger one. For instance, if I'm grabbing a girl's number, one of the routines I like to use is this. I would like to put my phone in the hand and say, hey, punch your number in. Here. That works on 24, 25-year-olds, 18-year-olds. It'll work on a 42, 43-year-old, 45-year-old woman also. So there's no difference in tactic and routine and techniques in picking up an older woman. So it's game as usual. It's game as normal. Game as you normally would. All you have to do is to be wary or be aware of those nuanced factors that I pointed out. You don't want to approach her with this mentality that they are easy, they are predisposed to sex easily, so I'm going to approach her in that sense, or it's going to be a big fat rejection. Secondly, you have to be aware of what's going through her head. She's going to ask herself, why is this younger guy approaching me? What does he want? Does he want something? Does he want money? Does he think I'm going to buy him a fucking car because he's flirting with me? Is he trying to raid my 401k savings? These questions are going to go through her head. Alright? And I already told you how to allay those fears. Firstly, game on as usual. Get rid of these myth and predisposed ideas in your head of how, older women are, as far as they being desperate and all the other bullshit you have heard. That is not the case. Alright? So, that is how you pick up a MILF or a cougar or a girl over the age of 36, 40.